Hello everybody, welcome to my channel, wherever you are in the world, whatever time of day or night it is. I wish you a grand day rising. I think it is fair to say there are some big players in the global food supply chain. There are a number of food and drink producers and manufacturers who seem to own the lion's share of brands, and I'm not just talking about nationally but globally. Arla, for example, has over 2,000 farmers in its cooperative, although many have come out and said that they're not with the Bovaer trial. They have recently bought out Westbury Dairies, and of course they also have Robert Wiseman Dairies in their portfolio, and close ties with Muller and or Newer, which is Irish, and all of those are pro Bovaer. Now, another example is Dr. Oetker. Dr. Oetker, of course, are known for baking products and their own label pizzas as well. But did you know, for example, that they also own Chicago Town? Now, some years ago, when Coors was looking to buy Bass Brewers in Burton-on-Trent, they were actually under the scrutiny of the Monopolies and Mergers Commission because of their global prowess in the drinks market. But when do you ever hear of organisations anymore like the Monopolies and Mergers Commission? A thing of the past. These days it seems that global powerhouses are just allowed to carry on swallowing up smaller businesses and those who are struggling, even if they happen to be a larger business. And then I suppose they maintain and continue a stranglehold, and that has the potential to affect our lives in many negative ways, even if we're being sold something as being positive. This video delves a little deeper into the activities of Nestlé. Now, there's a list of Nestlé brands on Wikipedia. One of you shared the Wikipedia address with me, and it's somewhere in the comments, but I will look for it and I will put it in the description of this video. Overall, Nestlé owns over 2,000 brands in 186 countries. Some of those brands are clearly Nestlé because it will say something like Nestlé Dairy Milk, for example, and then other times you just see the brand and you don't necessarily know straight away that it's a Nestlé company. For example, there's a number of dog and cat foods that are owned by Nestlé. Buxton Water is a Nestlé company. And here is a little slideshow of some of the global brands associated with or owned by Nestlé, either solely or in partnership with other food manufacturers. probably seen that there's a number of water brands that are owned by Nestlé. One of them is Buxton Water, another is Vittel of France, and another is San Pellegrino, which is a popular Italian brand. Now, it's kind of ironic that they've chosen to take over all these different water brands, and you might ask yourself, for what purpose? Because one of you asked me to go and look at what the CEO once said about water and human rights. So I did just that, and I went to Snopes, which has been fact-checked. This was published on the 18th of January 2018. This article was written by David Emery. It starts by saying the CEO of a multinational company that makes billions annually selling bottled water called the idea that human beings have a right to water as extreme. Isn't water a basic human right? Do we not all need water to survive? We're mostly made up of water. I found an article answered by global health professionals about the importance of water. It says that the human body is composed of 60 to 70% water. In actual fact, the median is 58%, with a 6% leeway either way. This can be to do with age, sex, and also things like fatty tissue. All those attributes contribute to the amount of water the human body is composed of. It points out that numerous bodily functions vital for survival depend on water, such as blood circulation, nutrient absorption, filtering substances, perspiration and temperature control. Drinking little water throughout life already increases the risk of numerous diseases and leads to problems with headache, dry skin, dark circles under the eyes, difficulty losing weight, constant tiredness, irritability and difficulty concentrating. Total water shortage is even more dangerous and can lead to fever and chills, slow heart rate, fever, diarrhea, weakness, dizziness, fatigue, and if prolonged too long, lead to death. And it's the same in animals as well. We need water to survive. So what is the purpose of buying all these water companies? Is it to provide us with water in order to deprive us if we do not conform with certain agendas, or just to contribute to a decline in populations? Basically, the article says that Brebeck-Letmonth called the idea that water is a human right extreme, and says what's false is that he didn't declare the water is not a human right, as a meme claims. But there's a very fine line, actually. The article says that the statement is controversial not only because it stands in direct contradiction to the position taken by the United Nations and human rights organisations, but also because Nestlé, like other giant water bottlers, sources its product for pennies on the dollar, often in locations where water resources are scarce or challenged. Peter Brebeck-Letmonth served as Nestlé's CEO from 1997 to 2008. He also served as chairman of the board for a time and is now chairman emeritus. Although he never uttered the exact words, "water is not a human right," he seemed to say as much in a 2005 documentary, We Feed the World, in which he characterised the view that human beings have a right to water as extreme. It doesn't matter whether he says that it's not a human right or whether it's extreme to have that right, it still seems a very wrong thing to say. And in fact, Brady, who told me to check this out, remembers the incident at the time. And the statement, of course, got huge backlash, and the internet tried to hide it but didn't do a very good job of it. I mean, here we are. I've had no problem in finding this and other articles about the incident. He said, "Water is, of course, the most important raw material we have today in the world. It's a question of whether we should privatise the normal water supply for the population. And there are two different opinions on the matter. The one opinion, which I think is extreme, is represented by the NGOs who bang on about declaring water a public right. That means as a human being you should have a right to water. That's an extreme solution." Oh, really? Okay. And then without water we get all manner of problems, physical and mental, that can even lead to death. He says, "The other view says that water is a foodstuff like any other, and like any other foodstuff it should have a market value." Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting. "Personally, I believe it's better to give a foodstuff a value so that we're all aware it has its price." As they own quite a lot of the water brands, if there's a crisis or another emergency, they can control how much they give us according to whatever agenda. And perhaps if we don't go along with that agenda, then they may see fit to deprive us. And then what will we do, especially if our mains or other supplies are somehow polluted? Indeed, he goes on to say, "And then one should take specific measures for the part of the population that has no access to this water. And there are many different possibilities there. I'm sure there are, but we might not like them." The pushback, of course, from the human rights advocates was instantaneous and strong. George McGraw, founder of the water rights non-profit Dig Deep, wrote, "People were shocked at the inhumanity of Brabeck's statement, and rightly so. Taken at face value, the video appears to pit the world's largest seller of bottled water against the 783 million people struggling to access what little water they need to survive. That's after allegations and rebuttals regarding Nestlé's role in restricting water access to several poor communities." And then fueling the controversy were instances in which large corporations privatised the water supplies of communities forced to sell or lease the resource due to economic hardship, only to raise the water rates of local residents to prices higher than many could afford, essentially cutting them off from their own resource. Follow the money. It's always about the money. I will put the link to this article in the description as well. I mean, Brabeck did go on to say that his statement had been taken out of context, the usual gaslighty thing, but certainly it would be worth your while reading it all for yourselves. And I don't want this video to go on too long. Then, of course, there are brands of Baby milk. Well, one of you commented about the baby milk issue, and it came from @Lynn from Lynn. I've been boycotting Nestlé for decades, and my professional association, I am a retired health visitor and paediatric nurse, has also been encouraging members to boycott them as well. Nothing to do with Bovaer, but rather its agenda of giving free baby milk to tribal mothers in African countries, to hook them on the stuff, and when their own milk dried up, they were dependent on the tinned milk, which they now had to pay for. Aside from the fact that they had to make up the milk with the only water available to them, usually dirty and contaminated, thousands of babies died. Nestlé had, of course, moved on to the third world because they had to stop advertising their first and second milks to new mums in this country. Also, Nestlé buys up water supplies in poor areas and runs bottling plants there, charging the locals to drink the water they used to get for free, or more or less. Yes, it's money, making money out of hardship. And yes, the milk situation obviously mirrors the water situation, and perhaps this gentle Beck has the same opinion about milk and many other natural sources of nourishment, which is why they are involved in the whole net zero programme in line with the WEF 2030 agenda. One of you worked as a consultant with Nestlé in about 14 countries, and you said you could understand my concern. It's not just my concern though, it's a lot of people's concern. And you said that it's not for Nestlé to monitor how the milk or other ingredients are produced to this level of detail. Well, I beg to disagree, because it's part of the whole food safety parameter to know exactly what you're dealing with, just in case you make somebody unwell. And you need to be monitoring and knowing all the ingredients that go into producing something. I agree that we shouldn't buy the products until there's some evidence from the millions of consumers that do buy the products that it's okay. And you also say that if there's a problem, it will show itself quite quickly. Nestlé does test and trial its products to as much detail as possible, but sugar is probably more of a risk to health than the milk. We see many people with diabetes and many overweight from consuming products with sugar or carbohydrates, but there are no complaints, and that's basically the same or similar choice. Boycott all products with milk or sugar, and then you have total avoidance, is my advice. Well, yeah, I mean, that's not bad advice. However, the point is being missed. I know you don't disagree with me about the safety of the additive, and I take on board that the additive will be in other products apart from in Nestlé products. However, that kind of is a little bit, that is sort of slightly missing the point. And it doesn't matter that Nestlé is not putting it in the milk. The point is that I'm raising people's, not just my own, but a lot of people's valid truths and concerns, and I continue to raise them, and I will continue to raise them. It doesn't matter what manufacturer is following what, the fact remains they're still supporting a global agenda that is skewed and doesn't sit right with many consumers. And Nestlé, as a global organisation with over 2,000 brands, is powerful enough, if they so wanted, to turn around and say, we're not sure about this, Beauvais, we don't really want to go along with this. But they don't, they follow the agenda because there's lots of money to be made. And gaslighting people with statements, with statements and hearsay and no facts, doesn't cut the mustard. We've moved on a lot since then. At Jacqueline Smedley 7853, you say the US Food and Drug Administration, FDA, has approved Beauvais for use in lactating dairy cattle. The FDA determined that Beauvais meets safety and efficacy requirements. I presume this is what Nestlé are alluding to in their email to me. In the EU, the additive was authorised according to Regulation EC number 1831/2003 on additives for use in animal nutrition in April 2022. Beauvais has more recently been authorised in Canada in January 2024 and in the US in May 2024. The FDA is practically a WEF company. I'm quite happy not to buy Nestlé or any other company's product that contains poison. After all, the FDA has approved and authorised for emergency use updated products to provide better protection against certain viruses caused by circulating variants, and we all know what happened there. The old chestnut necessity, as one of you says, it's the plea of all tyrants. Necessity for the common good. Unfortunately, the common good is commonly only good for the uncommon. And then other comments about reduced CO2 according to the net zero agenda. At Just Alan John says reduced CO2 endangers plants. Scotland cutting down millions of trees for wind power, that really helps the CO2 levels not. And last week we had something of an emergency where, of course, the wind didn't blow, turbines didn't turn round, and we have very low power reserves indeed, and certainly not enough electricity, which often we're having to buy in order to power all these electric cars and heat pumps and other things that they say we must have going into the future. And finally, at Bethany Lloyd H6T, you say methane breaks down very fast. It does indeed. How can cows' methane travel 20 miles up into the air and cause massive climate chaos? It breaks down very fast and falls to the ground. Absolutely, it makes zero sense. In fact, none of it makes zero sense. And the only thing I can link it to is mucho dinero. Ka-ching, ka-ching. The Wikipedia article also talks about former brands that Nestlé discontinued, sold, or changed the name of. And one might also ask there, why did they feel they needed to change the name? What were they distancing themselves from? What did they hope to achieve for the good by changing names of brands? So there's quite a list of things. such as Libby's. They sold that. It went to Alaska Milk Corporation in 2007. And then Enviga, a joint venture with Coca-Cola Beverage Partners Worldwide. And then bottled water. Many North American brands are now owned and marketed by Blue Triton brands. They might be worthy of a deep dive at some point. And some French mineral water brands were sold to the Ogun Group in France, including Saint Alix. And then we've got confectionery such as Drifter, O. Henry, and 2 or 3 others were sold to the Ferrero Group, Ferrero Rocher in 2018. And the Willy Wonka candy factory was also sold to the Ferrero Group. There again, that might be another one to look at. And the brand La Cocinera was sold to Findus. And in pet care snack attack, the name changed to begging strips. What a strange name. Why begging strips? I presume because it's like a pet treat, but it seems a bit of an odd name to give the brand. Branston Pickle is now owned by Mizcan. Gale's Honey was sold, and Sarson's Vinegar, that was sold to Premier Foods but is now owned by Mizcan. I don't know much about Mizcan. Do any of you know about Mizcan? Who they are? If you do, let me know down in the comments. Nestlé also owns 23.29% of L'Oreal, the world's largest cosmetics and beauty company, whose brands include Garnier, Maybelline, Lancôme and Urban Decay. Nestlé owned 100% of Alcon in 1978. In 2002, Nestlé sold 23.2% of its shares on the New York Stock Exchange. In 2008, Nestlé sold 24.8% of existing Alcon shares to the Swiss pharmaceutical giant Novartis. Oh, we've got pharma in there. Why am I not surprised? In 2010, Nestlé sold the remaining 52% of its Alcon shares to Novartis. So certainly there seems to be a lot of buying and selling going on. And it's interesting to see the part that pharma has played in business transactions with Nestlé. So Nestlé, I do not believe a word of what you're telling me in your email. And on that note, I will leave it there. I hope that you've all found this useful. If you would like me to look at another global or large organisation, let me know in the comments. And until then, I'll see you soon. And don't forget to like, comment and share this video. Bye for now.